solely to the first gen Troopers. I don't really recommend buying a second gen Trooper at all, really. I guess if you did find one and it was, you know, before 98, say up to 97, and it had a 5-speed, that's going to be your best bet. The 3.5s had a lot of problems, and the 4L30E transmission had a lot of problems. So if you're buying a second gen and it's a 98 up and it's got that combination, you're just asking for problems, really. First of all, we didn't even get them here until 84, so let's just start there. 84 is essentially a pup. It's got a 1.9 with a 4-speed. The 84 to 86 has the lighter duty chassis, lighter duty suspension, which is all basically, you know, 84, 82 to 87 pup stuff. I really don't ever recommend an 84 and 85 to anybody unless you're just looking for something, a grocery getter around town, or you know, something to hunt in the woods with or something like that, because they just don't have the power, and they're limited with that 4-speed transmission. And you know, you're not going to get out on the highway and do 70 miles an hour in one of these, and they just don't have enough torque to spin a larger tire. You know, even if you think, well, I'll change the gear ratio by putting a taller tire on it, it's just not going to happen. Now 84, 85 had the midship mounted gas tank with the filler in front of the rear wheels, and then in 86 they moved the fuel tank to the rear. 86 was when they introduced the 4-door. It's basically still on the same chassis and suspension, but they upgraded to the 2.3 with the MSG 5-speed. 86 was the first year that we saw the 4-door, and then those continued on until 91. Standard wheelbase 2-door was around until 88. 88 was the last year of that, and they're still really rare in 88. Now 89, they had the short wheelbase 2-door, the RS. Now, I see guys, you know, taking 86 and you put, you know, 33-inch tires on it or something like that, and man, forget about it. You know what I mean? That's not going to fly. They just don't have the power to do that. But in stock form, I love those 86, 87. They get great gas mileage. They're carbureted. They're more reliable than the fuel-injected trucks. So I really don't have anything against the 86, 87, except that, you know, I do a lot of hauling. I haul a lot of weight in the back of the truck, and then oftentimes while I'm hauling a lot of weight, I'll throw the tow bar on the back and hook up another Trooper. And so, you know, if you're going to be doing that kind of stuff, if you're going to be hauling a boat or any kind of trailer with, you know, construction supplies or anything heavy, you really want to stick with the 88 to 91 stuff. But 87 is when they changed the frame and suspension significantly. Like, you're not going to swap over anything from an 84 to 86 suspension onto an 87. Everything from the control arms, the frame itself, the manual locking hubs, axles. 87 is really a bastard year because it's got the same differentials as the 84 to 86. It's got the 8-bolt up front and the 10-bolt in the rear, but it has different front CV axles because it has to mate with the 8-bolt in the center, and then the later model suspension on the at the hubs. And then the rear axle is a one-off, 1 year only rear axle. 84 to 86 had the drums, and 87 they kept the drums, but they widened the track, so it's 4 inches wider, and it's a 1 year only setup. And so incidentally, since the 84 to 86 had a narrower track, they used a wider offset wheel. So I learned that the hard way. I had a set of wheels off of an 87, and I put them on an 86, and the rear wheels were rubbing on the frame. Now, if you take the wheels off of an 86 or 84 to 86, and you put them on an 87 to 91, you get a wider stance. The wheels will stick out a little further because of that wider offset. So that's kind of nice. I like those white round hole wheels. They work really good on a later model like 87 to 91. You throw them on there and you've got a wider stance. It looks good. Incidentally, though, the 87's frame still accommodates all the body mounts for the 84 to 86. So you can swap those bodies around pretty easy. If you go to try to put an 84 or 85 two-door body on an 89, for instance, some of it's going to line up, but not all the body mounts are going to line up perfectly. If you really wanted to build, let's say, the quote-unquote perfect Trooper, you take an 87 frame because you can put the early two-door body on it. Essentially, I guess you're just building an 88. 88 was really, if you're talking about two doors, you want, something really cool. You want to have a two-door Trooper, but you want to have the 2.6 and the MUA and the 10 bolt, 12 bolt, and all that. Yeah, you go to an 88, or you build one using an 87 frame. An 88 two-door is going to be hard to find. So let's just say hypothetically you wanted to have a two-door with all the goodies. You would take an 87, and you may even find an 87 two-door, but if not, you can take an 85 body, put it on an 87 frame. You can put the 10 bolt, 12 bolt in it, and the 2.6 with the MUA 5, and it's already, the 87 is already set up for carbureted carburation, so you can put your Weber on there on the 2.6 pretty easily. Okay, so 88 is when everything really kind of changed. It does still have roughly the same frame as the 87, but we went to the 12 bolt rear end with the disc brakes. We've got the 10 bolt up front now with larger CV axles. The major improvement, of course, is going to be the 2.6 and the MUA 5 transmission. Now, they also went to fuel injection, but I'm not going to classify that in the category of improvements. It may have been an improvement at the time when that stuff came out and it was all new. It may have run better or cleaner or whatever, but those things are having all sorts of problems these days. Then 88 to 91 are all pretty much the same. I mean, there were some minor changes, but nothing significant. I mean, you can essentially, I don't want to give you the wrong impression and say you can swap parts back and forth between an 88 and a 91. You'll find a handful of things that won't swap over, but what I mean is from a standpoint of, should I buy an 88 or should I buy a 91? They're pretty much the same. The biggest issue with any of these that you need to be concerned about if you're looking to buy one is the head gasket. They blow head gaskets a lot, and it's not like your typical, well, I pulled the dipstick and I checked for, chocolate milk in the oil pan. They don't do that. And sometimes they'll blow just a little tiny bit in the beginning, they might start running a little bit rough, like maybe seems like, oh, it's just got a fouled spark plug or needs a tune-up, maybe a cap and rotor. But I'll tell you, if you're gonna go buy one of these things, buy a compression gauge first. You've got no business owning a first-gen Trooper if you don't own a compression gauge. And they blow a head gasket between two cylinders or between a cylinder and a water jacket, and so they might just start losing a little tiny bit of water. If you go look at a Trooper and you pop the radiator cap and it's not slam full, if it's down a little bit, there's a 90% chance that truck's got a blown head gasket. Even if the thing runs perfect, it still can be losing a little tiny bit of water into the cylinder, and that's not good. You need to budget for a head gasket. You need to do a compression test on one and make sure that you've got consistent compression in all four cylinders. The other thing is that they burn a lot of oil. They tend to. The oil rings tend to stick and they tend to burn oil. So you may go look at one and it may not have a whole bunch of oil underneath it and the compression may be really good, but you still need to be prepared to check the oil religiously. They don't puff smoke either, which is really odd. A lot of times you say, well, a car, you can tell it's burning oil if it's puffing smoke. I've got one right now that burns like a quart every few hundred miles, and you wouldn't know it by driving it. It runs great, and it doesn't puff smoke. Other than that, the trucks are pretty bulletproof. Even if the bushings are worn out, they still run, drive, and perform. Ball joints, lower ball joints, especially in the front, will wear out, and they'll creak. You can grease them and that creaking will go away for a while. You can look up under them and see that the boots are split. And all that stuff is relatively inexpensive to repair. I'm not going to say it's super easy. It's not hard. It's just, it's a day's work of getting greasy, taking all that stuff apart. But that stuff doesn't concern me. Rust concerns me. Blown head gasket, of course, would concern me. If they're puking oil out of the front main seal, that can be really concerning because these motors will tend to drop the thrust washers, and if they're dumping a lot of oil out of the front main seal, you really need to be concerned about the crankshaft and the block. I've got a video called Isuzu Catastrophic Engine Failure, and you ought to look at that, because if you can wiggle the crankshaft in and out, that motor could be junk. You may be putting a whole motor in that, and that's the problem. The motors on these things are not cheap. You can do a head gasket pretty cheap, presuming that the head's not cracked. Even if it's cracked, you can buy a new head these days for $375 or so shipped. But you still need to consider that going into it. You can buy the top end kit rather cheap, and so even if you've got one of the blown head gasket, you can fix that if you do it yourself for $400, $500, $450, less than $500 if you do it yourself. If you talk about taking it to a mechanic, forget about it. Those guys, they don't even want to touch it first off, and so they're gonna charge you to touch it. I hear guys $1,500, is what they're getting quoted to do a replacement head gasket. Now, in '89, you got the 2.8 with the 5-speed, and then in '90 and '91 they put the automatic in it. Absolutely would not recommend anyone buy a V6 Trooper with an automatic. That GM 4L30E, that's the thing, it didn't even hold up to the 2.8. And then they put the 3.2 and the 3.5 to it in the second gens and just trashed them. The GM 4L30E is just not up to the task of hauling around a 3,700 pound four-wheel drive SUV. So, if you are looking at one of those, you have to have an automatic and you have to have the V6. You might as well put $2,000 in the bank and hold on to it, because you're going to need to rebuild that transmission at some point. The 2.8 is not a bad motor so far as they run forever, man. They're way more reliable than the 2.6s. Matter of fact, if I didn't have spare parts everywhere, and I was going to be left with one Trooper to live out the rest of my life, it would be an '89 to '91 2.8 5-speed. The reason being is the 2.8 is reliable, and you can get parts anywhere for it cheap, because it's essentially just a Chevy S10 motor. Every mechanic knows how to work on it. They're simple. The throttle body injection is ultra reliable, way more than the iTech. The 5-speed is bulletproof. So really, if you don't like working on trucks, if that's not your hobby, you just want to buy something reliable, get a 2.8 5-speed. That's going to be your best bet. You really have to rev that 2.8 to get the power and torque out of it, and it's just kind of an uncomfortable feeling. When you've got a V6, you expect that thing to operate in the lower revs, and it just doesn't. You really have to wrap it up, and it just doesn't sound right. It doesn't seem normal, but it works. And there's options. You can build a 3.1 and bore it. Tim Dixon does that and gets like a 3.2 with roller cam and all this stuff, and not really expensive, and it's a bulletproof upgrade to the 2.8. Guys do the 3.4, which I'm not a huge fan of, because stuff gets really complicated when you start talking about boring intakes and changing throttle bodies and injectors and whatnot. There may be a magic formula for that, but I think from what I've heard from Tim, if you've got a 2.8 and it's just getting tired, punch it out to 3.1 or 3.2 and stroke it with the 3.1 crank. And that's the simplest, most affordable, best bang for your buck with that truck. The automatic that they put in the 4-cylinder is the Toyota A-Trans A340. And that's a pretty bulletproof automated transmission. I mean, that's the thing that they were running the 4.7 liter V8s in the Tundras later. So you can't beat that automatic. So like I said, you put these white wheels off 84, 86 onto an 88 and up truck, and it kind of changes the stance. You see, you get a little wider setup. I guess I should mention the turbo diesel. 86, 87 had the turbo diesel. These are rare, they're hard to find parts for, they just didn't have very much power. And I kind of classify the 86, 87 turbo diesel with the 84, 85. It's fine for a hunting rig or around town, but I wouldn't do anything heavy with it. Well, and as I stated, there's options for upgrading your 2.8. So far as the 4-cylinder, this is what I'm working on. This is a Lexus 4-liter V8, 250 horsepower, in a first-gen Trooper.